Previously on the Fan of History, Shalmaneser III is the king of Assyria, and he has defeated all the Neo-Hittite/Aramean states north of the Orontes river in North Syria. Welcome to the Fan of History. I am the Fan of History, and this is the Battle of Qarqar in 853 BC. I'm just a fan of history. I'm not an historian. I try to be correct whenever I can, but if I'm wrong, please let me know and I'll learn and improve. Please watch the other videos mentioned there, especially the early Neo-Assyrian Army, because that will teach you a bit about one of the fighters in this fight. This is the first battle report I make, so I need feedback on the format. What do you want to know more about? What do you want to know less about? The date of the Battle of Karkar is 853 BC. On the 14th day of Ijar, Shalmaneser's campaign begins. And this battle takes place later. It is on the Orontes river in what is today the Levant, Syria, Lebanon. The enemies at this battle then, on one side you have Shalmaneser III and the Royal Assyrian Army versus an alliance named the League of Kings in this video. At stake is the liberty of Aram, Damascus, Israel and the other states that are fighting. Maybe even Egypt is in danger. If the Assyrian wins, they will probably have total domination of the Levant. Our sources are all Assyrian, and the main source is the Kirk Stela. There are a lot of problems with the Kirk Stela, which is depicted here in the picture. That is Shalmaneser III underneath all the writing. There are spelling errors in the Kirk Stela, and there are signs that this stela was erected very hastily, as if the great victory was needed to be told quickly. There's also 10 years later annal that Shalmaneser writes. And the Bible notoriously does not mention this battle, even though it talks a lot about the things that happened right before and right after the battle and the king of Israel at the time. Well, Assyria then is the superpower of the age. It is hard to understand how much more powerful Assyria is than every individual member of the League of Kings. Shalmaneser III is Ashur's chosen king. This is his annual campaign. He sets out on the 14th day of Iyar, which is in the spring. He crossed the Euphrates and the Tigris without incident. He received some missions and tributes from cities along the way. Aleppo paid tribute to him as it had done before, and Shalmaneser made sacrifices to the storm god Hadad in Aleppo. But Ir-Huleni, the king of Hamath, will not have the Royal Assyrian Army in his land. So I'll let Shalmaneser do the talking.
I approached the cities of Ir-Huleni, the Hamathite. I captured Adinu, Parga, Argana, his royal cities. I carried off his captives, his valuables, and his palace possessions. I set fire to his palaces.
So Shalmaneser defeats Ir-Huleni and plunders the palaces and cities, but Ir-Huleni flees with the remainders of his army to the south, and the alliance army shows up at Qarqar near the Orontes river. So, and Shalmaneser was probably aware that the League of Kings army is located at Qarqar, and it seems that their target was Patin, a state that it just recently became a vassal of Assyria, and it is sort of the first target to liberate from Assyria. So, the royal army then. Everyone in Assyria is a warrior, and these are just the best guys that got to go this year. They have auxiliaries from subjugated peoples, and they might have picked up Arameans on the way. They have superior armor and weapons. They use iron to an extent that nobody else does. They have heavy 4-man chariots. They do not do chariot charges at this time, but they fight with bows. bows are definitely their primary weapons. Their cavalry also fight almost exclusively by archery. The infantry have spears and shields, and they use their swords only for executions. You can learn a lot more about this army in the video The Early Neo-Assyrian Army on the Fan of History YouTube channel, because I go to great lengths to describe the army, and this is that army. This is very much that army described in that video. The size of the Assyrian army is unclear. Shalmaneser might claim 120,000 men, but the size is probably about 50,000. I would say between 40 and 50,000 Assyrian warriors. So why is there an alliance against the Assyrians? Because they have seen what happened in the north of Syria the years before this. And when the Assyrians come to your territory, you have to pay tribute or fight. If you fight and lose, you are massacred. But if you pay tribute, you are ruined. And if you pay tribute, you have to pay tribute every year, or then you end up at the top of the Assyrian target list for their annual campaigns. And then you get massacred. So northern Syria has fallen, and something needs to be done to stop the Assyrians. And fighting seems to be the best option. There's a lot of nations, small nations, with the same problems. So thus they formed the League of Kings. And as I said, all our sources are Assyrian. So we don't get the view of the League, especially not Israel then, which would have been really interesting. And in Old Akkadian, one of the languages used in Assyria, 12 kings was a term for any sort of alliance. So it's very questionable if there are 12 kings opposing Shalmaneser, or if he just makes that up. He says explicitly that I faced 12 kings. So who were these kings? Well, the leader of the League of Kings was Adad-Idri of Damascus. You see Damascus to the north on this map. It is the most powerful of the Aramean kingdoms. And this guy is known under many names: Adad-Idri, Bar-Hadad, or Ben-Hadad. He is definitely a figure in the Bible. He brings to the field 1,200 chariots, 1,200 horsemen, and 20,000 soldiers. Ir-Huleni of Hamath has joined up with the League, and he was probably in the League from the beginning. They did not arrive in Hamath in time to save him, but he is here, and he still has 700 chariots, 700 horsemen, and 10,000 soldiers. And he is eager to give Shalmaneser some payback for the burned palaces. The third member is King Ahab of Israel, and he brings to the field 2,000 chariots and 10,000 soldiers. But it is likely that the 2,000 chariots is an error, that actually just another zero probably. So he might have had only 200 chariots, which would be much more consistent with what we know of Israel at this time. You have Israel to the left on the map, and its capital is Samaria. So Israel is directly threatened here. Qarqar is not far from Israel. But Ahab considers Adad-Idri his enemy. He has fought with Adad-Idri twice already, but I saved that for the next episode. So we're going to talk more about the relationship between Ahab and Adad-Idri in the next show. The fourth member is the mysterious land of Qarqar, or that's what Shalmaneser says. It is traditionally identified with Byblos, the important Phoenician city. So this is a rare attempt by the Phoenicians to fight Assyria. Byblos is a long-time ally of Egypt, and it is possible that the land of Qarqar is actually Q, which is up in southern Turkey, because Kate, the king of Q, has already fought Shalmaneser III and lived to tell the tales. Also 500 soldiers, that's not a lot for Byblos to bring, who are quite close to this scene as well. But it is consistent with Q. But if this member of the League is not Byblos, then Egypt might not be in the League either. So the question remains what the fifth League member is if it's not Osirkon II's Egyptian forces. There is only 1,000 soldiers, But I could easily see Osokon II send 1,000 soldiers to show his support. Better to fight them up there than to fight them in Egypt. And eventually, the Egyptians will have to fight Assyrians on Egyptian soil. Shalmaneser only says that these are the enemies from the land of Kurmusra. And there are other theories about where this land is and who is actually fighting here. But we will go with Egypt. Sixth member of the league is Irkanata. Today it's Tel Arka. It's the fourth biggest member. It brings 10 chariots and as many as 10,000 soldiers. The seventh member is the island of Arvad. This is the only island in Syria with inhabitants today. They bring only 200 soldiers and they are Phoenicians at this time. So, and they trade a lot in the Orontes River Valley. Their king is Matan Baal. And it is very notable that Tyre and the other Phoenician cities do not send warriors to the battle. But Arvad does, so maybe Byblos did too. But Tyre definitely does not. They pay their tribute to Shalmaneser and they don't want to fight the Assyrians. Probably because the Assyrians are extremely important trading partners for Tyre. The eighth member is Usanata. I have no idea where this is. They send 200 soldiers. The ninth member is Shianu. I don't know about that either. But the 10th member of the league is very interesting because it is the Arabs led by King Gindibu and they bring camel cavalry. So this is the first mention of the Arabs in world history. And the Bedouins that fought the Egyptians at the Battle of the Bitter Lakes, you can see it in my 920s episode, 920s BC. They were probably Arabs, but they are just mentioned as Bedouins by the Egyptians. This is also the first mention of camel cavalry. Camels have been used for transport a lot in the Near East, especially by the Assyrians actually. But this is the first time people fight using camels. And camels are notoriously good at fighting horses if you know how to do it. The 11th member is the Kingdom of Ammon, located to the right on the map. It's ruled by King Baasa, the son of Ruhubi. And it's possibly a vassal state of Aram Damascus. It brings only 100 soldiers, which seems very little. But these are 11 kings, so either Shalmaneser lied or just used the old Akkadian term 12 kings for an alliance. But maybe the 12th king was the king of Qarqar itself. Or maybe it was a place called Beth Rehob, which maybe Baasa was the king of as well. So Baasa qualifies as two kings, possibly. This means that the League of Kings brings 3,910 chariots, 1,900 horsemen, 52,000 soldiers and 1,000 camel cavalry. This means that the forces lined up here on the Orontes River at Qarqar this will be the greatest battle at its time. There has been no collection of forces this big. It looks like the League of Kings is outnumbering the Assyrians or not, depending on how many Assyrians are there. So it's time to fight! We don't know anything about the actual battle. The Assyrians never talk about how they actually fought on the battlefield, possibly in order not to reveal their battle tactics. We don't have any other records, so we don't know any formations, we don't know what happened in the fighting. There are a few tactical records that are actually older than this, but very few, and detailed battle accounts is something of a later age. But we can ask Shalmaneser III what actually happened.
With the supreme forces which Ashur, my lord, had given me, and with the mighty weapons which the divine standard which goes before me had granted me, I fought with them. I decisively defeated them for the city of Qarqar to the city of Gilzal. I felt a sword, 14,000 troops, their fighting men. Like Hadad, I rained down upon them a devastating flood. I spread out their corpses, and I filled the plain. I felled with the sword their extensive troops. I made their blood flow in the Wadis. The field was too small for laying flat their bodies. The broad countryside had been consumed in burying them. I blocked the Orontes River with their corpses as with a causeway. In the midst of the battle, I took away from them chariots, cavalry, and teams of horses.
Well, that's the old Assyrian custom of taking every horse you ever see. And 10 years later, Shalmaneser changes his mind about what happened in the battle, because in the annals Recension C, that are written probably then in 843 BC, we learn that he actually killed 25,000 enemies and not 14,000. And he boarded ships and went out up in the sea, which makes very little sense. So the Assyrian battle account is an Assyrian propaganda piece. We cannot trust this information provided to us by Shalmaneser. So what really happened in the Battle of Karkar? Well, it was probably a draw. And the reason to think that it was a draw, and there is no political gain for the Assyrians. They received no tribute from the states in the League of Kings. So if the League of Kings' goal was to stop Assyrian expansion, they succeeded, but they did not liberate Patin. So, in the aftermath of the battle, Adad-Idri will fight the Assyrians 6 more times, and we'll talk plenty about that. But he will also attack Israel as soon as Shalmaneser is distracted elsewhere. Adad-Idri tries to expand Aram Damascus. But Assyrian expansion in this direction is halted for a long time. And this is, some consider this, the beginning of the decline of the empire. But that decline, even though it's long, will be stopped. And one day, one Assyrian king will claim all of this land, and he will be much feared. So feared, in fact, that people, his enemies, the historians, etc., sometimes just refer to him as the Assyrian. In our next episode, we'll talk about the 850s BC, part 2, covering the years 853 to 850 BC. We'll learn a lot more about Israel of the age, the prophets, and the Lord himself. Shalmaneser III will take his army in a totally different direction, because Shalmaneser has a lot of other problems than the Syrian expansion. This show will be released on July the 21st of 2014. Please discuss the show with me on YouTube, on Facebook. Subscribe, like, and share. There will be a podcast very soon, hopefully on iTunes. It's already up on the webpage, which I should put in this slide. There's also a link to more information about the battle. I'll put that in the show notes. And thank you for watching The Fan of History.